I'm back. Well, I've missed you guys so much as it pertains to like just doing these types of videos. Like, honestly, like this is where I'm truly in my element. So I'm Mark Monroe, and how do I even do this? Oh yeah, this is your come up. Go ahead and do not disturb. See, this is what happens when you... What's up, everybody? This is Mark Monroe. Oh, yeah. What's up, everybody? This is Mark Monroe. What's up, everybody? I'm Mark Monroe, and this is your come up. I missed you guys, but I'm back now. Go ahead and cue that intro. Let's talk about the Apple event that took place last night called Scary Fast. Okay, so Apple pretty much unveiled its new MacBook lineup and iMacs as well for its upgraded refresh. Though I wish that they would bring back the 27-inch monitors, but you know, hey, a guy can only dream. Anyways, so let's talk about the main piece though. It was the M3 chip. It was pretty much the entire case in point of the entire show, and showing the evolution from M1 to M2, then to M3. But really those leaps and bounds from the first M1 chip to now the M3. And then also Apple is like really putting in the gauntlet, or throwing down the gauntlet against chip maker Intel, because, you know, for all you know, before there was M1 chips, there was Intel based chips that were pretty much used for Apple MacBook products as well as its entire Mac lineup. Now Apple has said, you know what? Away with that, we can make our own and we can make it better, and we will show you. And that's what Apple has been doing. Now there's been some pushback from folks that have been like steadily still on MacBook Pros as well as iMacs on Intel based chips, but Apple's like, you know what, look, it's time to make the upgrade. And that's exactly what happened last night. Apple showed you last night where it showed leaps and bounds from the M1 chip, its first chip leaving Intel, to now, where it showed anywhere from 30 to roughly 50% performance increase. Now that's huge. Now, of course, let's keep it within perspective. If you look at the M2 chips as it pertains to M2, M2 Pro, and M2 Max to M3, you probably see about a 15 to roughly 25% bump in performance. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with that. In technology, we go through these periods of massive amounts of large innovation, and it's naturally it spikes up, but then after a while it kind of like tapers off, and then we kind of settle off. And then we're kind of like at that point of inflection where we either probably see an S curve normally take place, and that's normally where you see the next innovation cycle hit for Apple. My best guess is I'm probably guessing that that's where we go into the wearable tech for Apple, aka the Apple Vision Pro and whatever may come from that series, given that they're starting to put a lot of dollars towards that arena. But let's talk about the Apple event, because they were not only going after the Intel-based consumers, but then they were also going after the folks in whom wish that have been on M1 for quite some time and saying, hey, if you missed M2, here's a reason to significantly upgrade. Another thing that they did was they also lowered the price as it pertains to starting intro. And that's a good thing for Apple. Why? Because it's letting you know that they understand exactly what's happening on the economic landscape, but at the same token, Apple has such good pricing power in their supply chain and logistics, as well as just their manufacturing process of their proprietary tech, that they probably said, you know what, we could sacrifice for now as it pertains to like lowering the barrier of entry as it pertains to price for folks, given that the economics are having impacts across all businesses, and really trying to get that respawning of that PC market up and going. So with the reinvigoration of the PC sales market and Mac sales, because they don't really consider themselves PCs, what you're probably going to see is high sales growth, and you're probably going to see maybe a small little chip here and there at the profit margins. Now, what does that look like? Well, the reason why we say chip and profit margins is because of the fact that when you decrease pricing points, but yet let's say that the cost of materials still remain at whatever their constant is, or if they're a little bit higher, that's going to eat into a little bit of your profits. But that's okay, because Apple services revenue, I think that they really bank upon that. But I think the other thing is that they're looking at folks as it pertains to buying things on an enterprise level. How do we know that? If we look back at the event from last night, they really started to hone in on some of the things outside of your standard MacBook user. Now, normally through the history of time, MacBook users have been folks that are on the creative side, folks that are on the development side. Like a lot of developers go through Macs and everything else. And now what you're starting to see is they're saying, okay, hey, let's take that next leap and bound and start going after those enterprise customers, aka research. Like, for example, if I'm looking at developing a cure using the M3 technology and saying, okay, hey, it can compete with the other chip-based makers. Now, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what that looks like. And it's kind of interesting based upon the timing of which Apple has really released this event now and at the speed of what they're doing this at. Like, because here's the thing. I think that here's what my insights are. I think that they did this as a setup because normally what you see, Apple MacBooks normally come in either before or right after iPhone, or they come in around January, around the same time that we see iPads also come out to the market. But I think what they're doing is they're probably trying to set it up for next year, which is their Apple Vision Pro series lineup, which makes a lot of sense as it pertains to like shifting things within their product lineup, unveiling or delivery. And so that's going to be something that I'm definitely going to be watching, and I think that you should definitely pay attention to as well. So when we're looking at the basics of Apple and like really the PC market, I really pay attention to Intel. I'd pay attention to AMD. You can throw in NVIDIA also there, though that they don't make the CPU chips, but they make graphical chips. I would pay attention to those three alongside with Apple. And you can also throw in Qualcomm also because they're trying to make some noise too. But the reason why I would pay attention to those is because it gives us an inkling or some type of insight as it pertains to, is the PC market coming back? Let me explain real quick. So back in 2020, we saw that chip supply demand was literally like high. And the reason why is because the supply side was very low. So that raised prices on across the entire board. But at the same token, everybody needed, high performance computing or like, personal computers or whatnot. And that ultimately made those supplies ultimately go up in price. Now that we've seen that the market had stabilized significantly and actually went into kind of like a deflationary environment in that space, we started to see that market got very stagnant. So which meant that a lot of folks weren't buying laptops, they weren't buying desktop PCs, whatnot, because they had already bought a significant load of that stuff during the pandemic, which makes it very much more like clear as it pertains to why Apple's focusing towards enterprise. Because September 30th is naturally the ending of the fiscal year for a lot of companies, and also where budgets also had to be submitted, or essentially expenses and everything else, and budget planning gets set for fiscal year of the next year, aka fiscal year 2024. So what does that mean for, say, for example, the PC market? Well, for enterprise-based customers like a la your tech companies like Google, Amazon, Meta, and many other companies out there like Boeing, JP Morgan, they're probably going to be looking at their computer spend going into the next year, and aka supply and equipment costs. So if we're looking at higher supply and equipment costs, or if we're looking at equipment costs as it pertains to investment, then Apple makes a very much so compelling case as it pertains to its competition towards other players. Now, of course, if they're already using Mac, then they're probably going to be looking at the stage and cycle of when is it that they've upgraded, and they're probably going to say if they've held on to devices for about 3 to 4 years, it's probably about time that they probably start looking at the new tech. AKA if you started off with M1 or that Intel-based computer base or chip-based Macs, then now it's time to upgrade. Hence the performance boost and everything else. Now, of course, you're still going to have some of the pushback from some of the folks out there because of the fact of pricing, as well as whether or not they want to make those investments towards equipment, and that's fine. But we're just saying right now that essentially that this is a very interesting case for Apple. So things to pay attention to. As we look forward over the next set of, let's say, 3 quarters of earnings, not including this quarter because we just saw that they just unveiled it, so it's not going to be included in the recent quarter's earnings. So it's now this quarter that comes after Thursday's earnings that when they report, whenever you're watching this video, pretty much it's October 31st. So the things that we're going to pay attention to is, again, do their sales go up? And then on top of that, were their margins impacted? If their margins weren't impacted, but their sales were up, home run. If their margins were like slightly like, just we're talking about like tenths of a percentage or something like that, or maybe 1%, then, that's something to look at. But, okay, we understand. But at the same token, high sales and growth. Now, if we see that the sales growth is still somewhat stagnant, but at the same token, those margins have stayed, again, kind of a wash. But at the same token, it also feeds towards the demand story. So we're now looking at the demand story versus, say, for example, profit margins. And Apple is probably one of the best players on the market to really pay attention to outside of the standard chip sector. So what is it going to look like moving forward? Will Apple actually be able to increase their sales in MacBooks without being able to sacrifice profit margins? Or will they be just like everybody else and also be able to say, okay, hey, we increased sales because of the fact that we lowered price for demand, but at the same token, our profit margins took a slight little dip, but yet we did it for the cause of ultimately our entire lineup. It's going to be a very interesting tale to see how everything plays, but how do you think it's going to play out? Go ahead and write down what you think in the comment section down below. I definitely want to hear it. And of course, if you liked the video, go ahead and hit the like button down below. Again, I'm a little rusty from this episode. This is my first one, so I look forward to doing more of them, and you may see a little bit more back to back. Until next time, I'm Mark Monroe, and this has been your Come Up. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.